Hi guys, so today we're checking out the Rockslide Engineering Step Sliders fitting all 2020 and newer Gladiator JTs. So if you are looking for the ultimate protection for your pinch weld and your rocker area, but you're also looking for premium accessibility for your truck, this is going to be a great choice to take a look into. Now these steps, as they sit with the doors closed, are going to act as rocker protection or a rock slider. So as you can see, this is going to be very similar to a Ruby rail, except for it is going to be a little bit extended out from the body, which will be great if you are out on the trail and you don't want anything hitting the side body of your truck. And this is also going to come with underbody protection or a skid down at the bottom to make sure that your pinch weld underneath there is heavily protected. Now these are going to be incredibly durable, made of an 11 gauge CNC cut steel, so you can ensure that these are going to hold up whether you are rock crawling on the trail or you're daily driving your truck. If somebody opens up their door in a parking lot, these are going to take the blow instead of the body of your truck. Not to mention, this is going to have a nice textured black powder coat finish to protect that steel underneath, but this is also going to match with any other heavy duty accessories and really add a more aggressive and off-road look to the side of the truck. Now the big thing about this is the fact that when the doors are shut, this is going to act as a rocker panel or a rock slider, and then once you open up the door, the step is going to fold out. Now what I like about this is the fact that this is going to give you some accessibility down at the bottom here. So if you have a lifted Gladiator, this is going to give you a pretty big drop down step. Now you're going to have a large surface at the front for the front doors on both sides, and then you're going to have a smaller surface on the back for your passengers. Now this is also going to have a nice grip tape down at the bottom, so on those wetter days you're not slipping around on the side steps. And overall it's going to give you the best accessibility for getting in and out of your Jeep, and even if you want to take your Freedom panels off, you can utilize this as well. Now with that being said, these are going to come in at roughly $2,200, which is a pretty steep price point. However, with the quality and the construction and the overall accessibility with this, I definitely think that that price point is worth it, and there's a couple of reasons why. Now overall, of course, we're getting that drop down step whenever we need it, whenever we open up the door, but this is going to be incredibly durable. Like I said before, these are really able to handle some abuse with how they're set up, even with this power step integrated into the rock slider itself. Now the motor that operates the step itself is also going to be waterproofed, and the wiring harness is completely put together and it's completely plug and play. So overall, these are pretty easy to install and they're very user friendly, and again, they are going to be incredibly durable. Now in comparison to some other choices for side steps, a lot of those are going to be less expensive because they are not powered. Now this right now is one of the only options available for a power step. However, if we take a look at some other power steps, historically, they are not going to be set up like this. Some options may flip down from the rocker panel itself instead of being stored in the rock slider like this one is. Now, I personally like this setup because this is going to offer a little bit more protection, and it's not going to hang down like some of those other power steps would. And overall, this is just going to be tailored for the off-roader who wants premium accessibility and they're not afraid to kind of bang up their side step, because overall this is going to hold up. Now as far as install is concerned, I'm going to give this a 2 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, and the only reason why I give it a 2 out of 3 is just because this is a lengthy and detailed process. However, it is pretty easy to bolt these on and wire them up. The wiring harness is completely plug and play, and you're really just going to need some pretty basic hand tools in about 2 hours worth of your time. So speaking of that install, let's jump into that now. The tools that I used for my install were a tape measure, a pneumatic and electric impact wrench, a pair of scissors, a dead blow, a flathead screwdriver, a trim removal tool, a 13mm and 11mm ratcheting wrench, a 1/4-inch drive ratchet, an 18, 13, 10, and 8mm socket, a T40 torque socket, panel removal tools, and an electric ratchet. So the first step to this install is to prep our pinch weld. So we're going to remove the 2 10mm bolts up at the front here. I'm going to use a 10mm socket in order to do that. So our next step is underneath the Jeep. We're going to loosen up the 3 body mount bolts because we have to slide our bracket into that holds our step slider. So I'm going to use an 18mm socket. I'm also going to use a pneumatic impact wrench in order to do this. But we don't need to take them out completely, we just need to loosen them up because the bracket slips between the bolt head and this washer here. Then we can repeat that for the front and rear body bolts. So now that the body bolts are loosened up, we can install our brackets that are going to hold our step slider. We have one for the rear, which is going to be the taller bracket. We have one for the middle that is going to be the flat bracket, and then we have one for the front that is going to be the short bracket. Now we can head underneath the Jeep and we can install them on the body bolt in between the bolt head and the washer. Now this is just gonna hang there just like that. Like I said, it's gonna go in between the bolt head and that flat washer there, and then we can repeat that for the other two mounts. Now it may have a tough time going on. What I usually do is just grab a dead blow and just give it a good tap. And that should knock it into place. Then we can do the same thing for the front. Now the front's not gonna be able to be installed straight on like this or head on like that. So what we need to do is put it at a 45-degree angle, and then we can wiggle it in place. So what we need to do next is install this guard. Now this is going to prevent any metal on metal contact or the slider itself contacting the side of your paint on the rocker panel here. So this is going to have a little gasket that's going to protect it there. It's going to have 3M on the back. We're going to stick it on in just a second, but we want to measure it out because it is going to be a little bit precise. Now from this bend down for the front longer seal here, we want to make sure that it's about a ½ inch down off that bend. So I'm just going to take my measuring tape and a dry erase marker and just make a mark just so we have a reference point because the back is going to be a little bit different. Then we can go to the back. So this one is going to be about 5/8 of an inch down. So I'm just going to line it up just because this is a little bit difficult to see. I'm going to line it up with that 2-inch mark, go down to about 5/8 of an inch. Now again, just as a reference point, this straight edge surface is going to match right up with the smaller piece, and we want to make sure that it's on this seam on the back here. So we're gonna line it up originally there, and then we can stick it down. So what I'm gonna do is just peel this and make a little tail. So we can line up the front and the back, and then we can just continue to peel the rest of the backing off once we have it lined up correctly. So we're gonna go off of our reference point, which is about a ½ inch down for the front. But we want to make sure that it's up against here. So I'm just going to continue to pull this backing out. Now then we can repeat that process with the back gasket. So what we need to do next is attach our extension piece here to the main part of our step slider. There is going to be a little spacer that we're going to put in between, and we're going to use our provided hardware in order to attach this. Pop this into place, push these together. And and we can start to loosely secure them down. We're not going to tighten anything down just yet. We want to make sure that all 4 bolts are installed, and then we can go back and tighten them up. So there's going to be 2 on the bottom here, and then there's going to be 2 up top that are a little bit harder to see, but it's the same process. You're gonna have a flat washer on each side. And then now that all of those are lined up, what we can do is take a 13mm socket and a 13mm wrench, and we can tighten those up. Now while we're here, we can take the wiring harness from our motor and we can drop that down through this little hole here, because we're going to need to access it once we make sure that everything is mounted up. We're going to need to be able to plug this in. So at this point, what we're going to do is grab a friend and we're going to mount up our side step. There are studs here that are going to go in our pinch weld to hang the step slider onto the pinch weld area, and we also want to make sure that these brackets here go over the mounting brackets on the slider itself. So at this point, with the studs through our pinch weld area, what we can do is secure them down. They are going to be different sizes depending on which stud you're working on. So we're going to take the flat washer and the nylon lock nut that's provided, and we can secure those down. Now for the back one here, we're gonna have a large one on the end and a smaller one on the inside. Now we're not gonna tighten anything down just yet. We're gonna make sure that everything's on and secure, and then we can tighten everything up. So once that hardware is threaded on the back studs here, we can repeat that process for the other studs. So at this point, what we can do is attach the slider to our bracket. We're going to be provided with bolts as well as flat washers, and there's going to be a welded nut on the back of the bracket, so we can just start to thread those in. Because we didn't tighten anything up yet, we can move it around in order to get that bracket lined up. So we're gonna have 4 bolts per bracket. And once those are threaded in on this back one, we can repeat that same process for the other ones, and then we can go back and tighten everything up. So what we can do next is tighten down the slider to the bracket here. I'm gonna use a 13mm socket in order to do that, and we can repeat that for the other 2 brackets as well. Next, we can tighten down the hardware that's on the studs here. I'm going to use a 13mm and an 11mm ratcheting wrench to do that. Then we can repeat that for the other 6 studs. Last but not least, we're going to tighten up our body mount bolts with that same 18mm deep socket. And we can repeat that for the other 2 body bolts. So the bolt on the pinch weld that we took out at our first step, we're gonna reinstall right up at the corner here. Now this is gonna keep part of our quarter panel installed on the side. So there is a pre-drilled hole here. I'm just gonna go ahead and thread that in, and then we can take our 10mm socket and tighten that up. Now next, on the side of our step slider here, there are little pre-drilled holes. We also have little plugs for these, so we're just going to take our provided plugs and put those in each of those pre-drilled holes. So once everything is complete on this side, we can repeat that same process on the other side, and then we can get into our wiring. So before we hop into the wiring, I did want to stop down and show you guys the wiring harness. It is a big wiring harness, and it may look a little bit overwhelming, but everything is plug and play, and Rockslide Engineering does include a very helpful and very detailed wiring diagram in their instructions, so it is actually very easy to operate and to use. So this wiring harness is split into a couple of different pieces. We're gonna have our driver side and our passenger side. I personally like to label everything. It makes it a little bit easier when we are actually in the installation process. Now on each side, we're going to have a sensor for the front and the rear door. We're also going to have a driver side and passenger side actuator. And then there's also going to be a wire for an LED light. Now we do not have that. It's not included in this kit. However, you can add that on, and that wire is going to be integrated into the wiring harness. So it's very easy if you'd like to add it on in the future. Now you're also going to have a switch wire. This is going to turn the power on and off. That is going to be helpful for when you take the doors off, because the sensors are actually integrated into the door itself. Then we're going to have a wire for our battery. This is going to go up to a couple of leads that have an inline fuse that's going to be attached to the negative and positive terminal on the battery. And then we're going to have a full control box that's just going to be kind of the brain for this whole operation. So overall, it does look a little bit overwhelming. It is a large wiring harness. However, because everything is plug and play, and because they make it very easy to kind of label everything and put everything in the correct place, it is going to be pretty easy to wire this up. So what do you say we start disconnecting some of our trim and start plugging in our wires? So what we're going to do first is pull out some of the side trim. This is going to allow us to tuck the wiring harness underneath the carpet and underneath the trim, so it has a very clean look. So I'm going to start up at the front. We're going to disconnect this door, and we're going to push it out so we have some room to work with. And then we're going to pull up some of this trim over on the side. So our first step is just to pull off this piece here. And if you've pulled your doors off before, you should be familiar with this step. We're going to disconnect the door wiring harness. I find it a little bit easier just to grab a trim removal tool and pop that up, or like a flathead screwdriver or something. Then we can unhook our limiting strap, and then we can unbolt our door stopper here. I'm going to use a T40 Torx socket for that. Once that's taken out, we can carefully open up our door. That'll give us some room to work with. So what I'm going to do now is disconnect where this wiring harness is clipped in. It's just held in by a clip on the back. So I'm going to take just a pry tool, just pop that out of place. So once that's off, we can get that out of the way. Then we can take a 10mm socket and we can remove this nut that's holding on part of our trim over here. So once the hardware is removed from here, what we can do is start to peel the trim away from the body. Just be mindful of this hook here. You don't want to break these pieces of plastic. I'm actually going to pull from the back, and you just got to give it a good tug. Might be helpful to take out the floor mat if you have a factory floor mat. So once we pull that forward, you can see that it's gonna kind of try to pop back into place. We can carefully unhook it from here, move it outward. So once it's disconnected from here, what we can do is just put this to the side. And then we can kind of do the same thing for the middle piece. Now this middle piece is going to come off as well. And I'm just going to pop out this little trim piece over by the bottom of our seat belt. It's just going to push inward. And we can do the same thing for our trim. This is just going to be held in by a number of clips. Now this may be helpful if you move this seat forward, and then we can start to go to the back for our trim. So at this point, what we can do is continue to pop this trim forward. So I'm actually going to take off this piece and get this out of the way. And then we can take that same pry tool and just continue to pop the trim forward. This is all going to be held together by clips. And you're going to want to push it in towards the cab area. That's how it's kind of connected. So we don't need to disconnect this trim piece all the way. What we need to do is just make sure that there's enough access or room to work with down below so we can pull up the carpet. And we're gonna send a wiring harness through the floor of the Gladiator so we can connect it to our step. But now that everything is disconnected on this side, what we can do is repeat that same process on the other side, and then we can lay out our wiring harness. So down at the bottom, we do need to disconnect our little storage container here. It's held in by 4 T40 Torx bolts. I removed the 2 on this side already. I'm going to use the T40 Torx bit that I have as well as my impact wrench to remove the other 2. And then we can get this out of the way because we will need to pull up the carpet so we can run our wiring, but this is holding it down for the time being. So once all 4 are removed, what we can do is just pop this out of place, put this to the side, and we'll reinstall this in just a minute. So I'm going to take this jack out of the way as well, and this can go back. As you can see, this is now a lot easier to pop out of place, and we can access where we need to put our wire through and where we need to run our wiring harness. So there's a little piece of tape here that I'm going to pull back. This is covering one of the access holes. So once that tape is pulled back, I'm just going to take a flathead screwdriver and just peel up on this. It's going to be held in by some glue. Just need to pry up on the glue to undo that. Once that seal is broken there, it'll pull right up. So what we're gonna do here is put our wiring harness over the carpet right now. Then we can take our passenger side wires, which is the shorter loom of wires, and we can put this through where our storage box was mounted. Pull this all the way through. And then we can flip it back. Now here's where it's helpful to identify your wires. So our actuator wire, this is what is going to be plugged into the step itself. That's what's going to go through this hole here. So we're going to isolate that wire. This should be the red and the black on the passenger side. I'm actually just going to pull off my label since now we know. And we can send it through that hole in the floor. Now what we can do is identify our actuator, or now what we can do is identify our sensor wires. So on the passenger side, the rear sensor is going to be the white and blue. That is going to go over on this side here. And then we're going to run our sensor for the passenger side front up towards the front. So we're not going to plug these in just yet. We're kind of just getting them in place. Then our last wire is going to be that LED wire. This is color coded as well in the wiring diagram. I put some electrical tape over here because we are not going to be utilizing that. So I'm just going to tuck that under the carpet, and that's where it's going to live. What we can do now is attach our sensor. Now this is going to go right underneath our striker here. So I am going to take the provided alcohol wipe and just prep where this needs to go. We'll let that dry for a second. Then while that's drying, what we can do is attach the 3M tape on the back here. And we can put this, make sure that's dry, put this into place directly under that striker. Give it a good press. We're also going to have a piece of 3M to make sure that this wire sticks here. So I'm going to stick it on the part of the body there that we need it to go on, and we can actually just tuck it back. So for the back, we don't need all of this excess foam to cover our wires. Now very carefully, what I'm gonna do is just trim this. So I just have a piece or a pair of scissors. We're just going to trim the back here. So now that that's trimmed, what we can do is tuck this wire in and take our passenger side rear sensor wire, and we can start to run it up, and it's going to be tucked behind here. Now, it might be a little bit difficult to see just because this trim is not really going to have a lot of give. But we are able to push it out of the way enough just to get it tucked. Now once that's kind of tucked up there, we can finish tucking it up in just a second. We're going to plug this in first. So again, this is the passenger side rear door sensor. Take off our label. And this is the blue and white. Plug that in. We can tuck this in the trim. So then we can repeat that process with the front door sensor. This is going to be the passenger front sensor. It's going to be the gray and the green wire. But we're really just going to repeat that as far as sticking our actual sensor itself underneath our striker here. So once that's stuck on underneath, what we can do is just peel this part back. And this is where that excess protective foam comes in handy. So we can just stick it right in that corner and wrap it around. You also want to make sure that this wire isn't in the way of any of the clips as well as the seat belt. But once we figure that out, what we can do, clip that into place, we can get rid of our label, and then we can move to our actuator wire. So our actuator wire is actually underneath there. And then we'll pop the trim on. So now that we are finished with our sensors, we can put together our actuator wires and our actuator plug. So you are going to be provided a plug here. This just allows you to have a smaller thing to route through the floor instead of routing this whole plug through the floor. But we are going to make sure that we are color coding it correctly. It is going to be color coded on the plug itself. And this is also included for the LED lights. So if you do have the LED lights, there is going to be color coded plugs for that as well. So what I'm going to do is just put the red, black to black, and you're going to hear a little click. And then once you hear that, you can close this clip, and that's going to keep it secure. Now once that's secure, what we can do is plug it into the plug that we passed down from the step. And then once that's clipped together, what we can do is start to kind of tuck this up and put our trim back together on this side. So what I'm actually going to do is just put this sticker back into place. I did pull the plug up as far as I could. Now the excess wiring underneath we can clean up with a zip tie to make sure that it's not hanging down. But if you pull this up as far as you can, it shouldn't hang down too much. I'm just going to put this seal back over top. It is pretty thick tape. So this will stay in place and make sure that this is sealed. And then what we can do is start to kind of put everything back together. So I'm going to place the carpet back down. Maneuver this back under this back trim piece. Make sure that this is kind of out of the way here. We can take our kicker panel, making sure that it's out of the way of everything. Start to slide it into place. So then we can put our kicker panel back into place. Just have to give it a good tap. We can reinstall this 10mm nut that was holding part of the kicker panel on. Then we can put our door back together. So first I'm going to install the bolt for the door stopper. Tighten that up, T40 Torx. Then we can attach our limiting strap, our wiring harness here. You can actually plug this back in or pop that back in to the clip. Pull down on that white retainer, push down that red locking tab, and then we can pop this part of the kicker panel back in to cover that up. So once that is all back together, we can repeat that same process on the other side. So once we have plugged in our sensor wires and our actuator wire, what we can do is install our control box. Now, as you can see, there's this big plug in the middle of our wiring harness here. We're just going to plug that into the main control box, and this is actually just going to sit up underneath our rear seat. Right? We're going to tuck that there for now. We can secure it down if we need to in a minute, but we're going to run the rest of our wiring harness up towards the front so we can connect our switch and our battery. So on the driver's side, we're gonna have 2 extra wires that we're gonna run up to the front. Now I'm gonna run them just where I did with the driver's side front sensor wire. This is gonna go underneath the trim, and it's actually gonna pop out up at the kicker panel up at the front, and then we can connect it to the battery, connect it to the switch, and tuck everything up. So I'm just gonna pull this through, just like we did with this wire. And this is just gonna sit up at the front. You can kind of start to place this back down into place. I'm not going to connect it just yet. I'm just going to wait till everything is kind of in place before we do that. So this may be a little bit difficult to see, but right above your OBD2 plug here, you're gonna have an 8mm bolt. Now I'm gonna remove that because we're gonna mount up our switch to this. So our switch is going to mount where that bolt is, and we're going to have our switch here so we can easily access it. So I'm gonna take out that 8mm bolt with an 8mm socket. All right, now that's gonna kind of fall down for the time being. Then we can take our bracket. It's gonna sit like this, so we can grab our switch and pop that into place. That's just gonna pop through the front. May need a little bit of pressure there. Then we're gonna have 3 prongs. We're gonna take our switch wire, we're gonna have 3 prongs. The back one, copper one, is gonna be our ground. Then red and red are gonna be on the silver. Now we're gonna have one more ground wire that we'll attach in just a second, but we can actually attach this ground wire to that bolt to get a good ground. Take off our little label here. And we can grab our 8mm bolt. So once you have the OBD2 bracket and the switch bracket mounted up together, we can start to snug that up. But what I also want to do is take this ground wire and make sure that this is sandwiched in between the bolt and the OBD2 bracket. So this may be difficult to see as I'm tightening it up, but you'll get a better view in just a second. So what we're gonna do next is take our smaller wiring harness for our battery. We're gonna take the 2 plugs and we're gonna put them through the firewall, connect them, and then we'll connect this to the battery. So our first step is to make a hole in the firewall, which there is an access hole right on the side of our brake master cylinder here. It may be a little bit difficult to see, but it's gonna be tucked up right in this corner. I'm just gonna use a flathead screwdriver and pop that out of place. It's gonna look like that. Then we can take our 2 connectors and run them straight down. Now we're gonna be back on the inside real quick and plug them in. So these are gonna drop right to the left of the brake pedal. And then what we can do is find our labeled battery wire and peel off our little label there. Then we can plug this in. So red to red, black to black. Now once that's connected, what we can do is pull it through towards the engine bay, and that's gonna get rid of a lot of this excess wire here. Our wires that we connected are here. We're gonna run these over towards our battery. I'm gonna tuck them underneath some of these connectors here. So I'm gonna use a 10mm socket. And remove the 2 nuts here. Just gonna pop this under just to make sure that they are secure. All right, then we can reconnect those. And we'll be able to zip tie those up just to make sure that they're not falling down completely. Tighten that back up. Then we can go to the other side and do the same thing and then connect it to the battery. So if we pull this trim forward, what we can do is tuck the wire into this wiring harness. Now once that's through, we can tighten that back up. Same 10mm socket. Kind of tuck it over here next to our fuse box, and just to keep that kind of taut. And then we can connect it to our battery. So we're gonna have our positive lead and our negative lead. I'm gonna use a 10mm socket to connect our negative wire. Then we can take the same 10mm socket and connect our positive wire. So once everything's tucked and connected, what we can do is start to put our trim back together. This is just going to be the same process that we did on the passenger side. So I'm just going to put our back trim back in place. The front piece is going to tuck under the rear piece, so this might be a little difficult at first. So what we can do now is reinstall our jack. So this is going to slide into this little bolt right here. Then we can line up our knob, secure that down. And this just threads on. Tuck our control box on top of that. Then we can grab our storage container. We can line that back up. And we can take the factory bolts, thread those in place. Once those are threaded, we can take our T40 Torx and tighten them up. Cool. Then we can flip our seats back down. Making sure that this does not get in the way, so we can actually kind of just pull that back. And then we can reinstall our kicker panel. So what we can do is start to kind of tuck these wires. You could also zip tie them. However, these are just gonna sit right in the back here. We can start to maneuver our panel back into place. So once this is in place, what we can do is secure the nut back down on this stud over on the side here. Using our 10mm socket. And then we can re-secure our door. So first we're gonna start by installing our door stopper over on the side. We can tighten that up with our T40 Torx. Then we can reinstall our limiting strap. Plug our harness back in. You might have to pull down on it a little bit to get that clip to go. Secure the red locking tab. And we can put this back in place. It is gonna be a little bit tight now that that bracket's there. So our last step is to install our magnets on our doors. Now, just like we installed our sensor right below our striker, what we're gonna do is install the magnet that's going to actuate the sensor and make our step come out. We're going to attach it right below the striker as well. So you kind of want to measure it out. You can take out a tape measure in order to do this, but you're gonna get a magnet and a piece of 3M tape. Take the backing off of the magnet and one piece of backing off of the 3M. I also wiped it with the provided alcohol wipe as well. So once that 3M's on the magnet, we can pull that off. We can measure if we need to, or we could just line it up. So you can measure if you need to. I'm just gonna measure from the magnet or the sensor to the middle of the striker. And then we can do the same thing for the door. So that's where the middle of the striker is. Magnet should go on about here. Then we can repeat that process for the other 3 doors. So the last step is just to flip this switch, and that's gonna run power through the steps. They are gonna come out on either side, and then we can close up the doors and they should flip right back in. So that is going to wrap it up for my review and install. Make sure you like and subscribe for more videos and products just like this, and always keep it right here at extremeterrain.com.